Hi, I'm here at the TCR show 2013 with a good friend of mine, Paul Newsome, owner of swimsmooth.com. Paul's going to give us a few tips on long distance swimming from 10k to the channel. Paul, what would you say your best tips on training for 10k marathon swims up to channel swims would be? For the first timer.
I think the key thing to remember for anyone attempting one of these longer marathon swims is to really make sure that you get the consistency of your training right. So a lot of people set off like a bull in a china shop, trying to, the first 5 or 6 weeks, all geared up, all very, very motivated, and set off and do some great training sessions, but then maybe get a little bit of demotivation, sort of lack a little bit of luster with it, or even maybe get injured within the shoulders, and those sort of things need to be accounted for. So anything that you need to be doing for training for a big marathon event is very, very important to always have the consistency of your training in mind. So we're not talking about world beater sessions, but just over a prolonged period of time. Let's say, I personally trained for 3 years leading up to this channel, just with progressively longer marathon swims leading up to that. I mean, that's a long time. You can actually, if you're actually at a reasonable level with your swimming at the moment, around about 18 months would be a good lead time into the English channel, and you're pretty much going to have to take that anyway, given the fact that you've got to book in your pilots and all these sort of things. So I'm currently training for the Manhattan Island swim. That's in June, so we've got about 3 or 4 months left before I think it's 15 weeks before I actually swim there. I've just come off the Rottnest Channel swim, which is the world's largest channel swimming event at this point in time. That's a 20k swim, so I started my preparations for that, specific preparations for that, back at the start of September. So I had about a 5 or 6 month lead time into that, and the whole time I was training for that, I was always just mindful of the fact that I've got a couple of key sessions per week which I want to get in. One of those being my longest swim session on the weekend, and they would range in distance from when I was starting from around about 6k's continuous swimming up to around about 14 was my longest swim before a 20k swim. But every single Thursday, without stopping or getting messed up with Christmas and those sort of things, every single Thursday for the last 14 Thursdays leading up to this race, I did a hard 10k swim where I just measured my pace, and it was almost like a lot of runners do tempo runs and stuff. This was the equivalent of a tempo run every Thursday morning, 10k's, so I could actually just measure my progress over time and actually get myself strong, physically capable to actually do that distance. And it worked an absolute treat. So I got my times down and did a couple of PBs. This one 2 hours 10 for 10k, which for me is really quite pleased. That's about 118, I think, per 100. So doing that on a repetitive basis is very, very important. Just being mindful that your technique as well is not falling apart. We get a lot of new first-time swimmers doing the Rottnest Channel swim. There's about 5,000 people competing in this race, 200 of which are actually doing it as a solo swimmer. We get many of these swimmers back in October, so about 4 or 5 months before the race, coming to me for video analysis and assessments. And the key thing that I'm making them aware of is the fact that anything that they're doing with their stroke, which may cause injury down the line, as volume starts to increase as you get nearer and nearer to that event, can be devastating for your progress, and obviously that's something that you don't want. So the key things to remember from a technical perspective, we were just talking earlier on today in the seminar that we ran about simple things like a thumb first entry into the water. Whilst this is often taught on certain programs, etc., thumb first entry has been shown. You can even see my shoulder here internally rotating, and if that's done on a repetitive basis, time after time, lap after lap, kilometre after kilometre, that can really cause you issues with the shoulders there. So the first thing to remember is to enter into the water fingertips first, not thumb first. Secondly, what often goes in combination with that is a crossover in front of the head as well. So people crossing over in front of the head, whilst that can cause the legs to sizzle apart and create drag and slow you down, you can also put more load on the shoulder there as well. Another thing to watch out for is underneath the water when you're pulling through, not pushing down with a straight arm, which is very common. That loads up the shoulder, and again over time will cause you some issues and mishaps there. So, like I say, going into this training program, I think I reached a peak of about 45k's a week leading up to this 20k, and that might sound like quite a lot of training for a lot of you guys, but I do know a lot of swimmers who will be swimming more like 60 or 6 to 5 Ks a week for this event. I simply haven't got time to actually fit that in. So the key thing is, when you're preparing for an event like this, work out what you can realistically do, work out what you can realistically build up for, okay, and set off at quite a conservative level when you're actually starting to prepare for such an event. Watch out for that bull in the china shop sort of thing. A great 5 or 6 weeks thinking, wow, I'm at the top of the world here, I'm going to break the world record or anything like that, because sustainably it tends to not sort of be sustainable over a longer period of time. You might get demotivated, lack that luster, and run into problems with the shoulders, etc.
How many sessions was that 45k over a week?
Okay, so I'd have my 10k on the Thursday, and like I said, maybe around about 12 or 14k swim at the weekend. So that's 26 or 25k's of my 40, and then the other sessions would be broken down to around about 4 or 5 sessions of around about 4 or 5k's basically. One of those sessions would be purely technique work. One of those sessions would be what I call a red mist session, which is very simply 10 times 400 meters at around about my threshold pace plus between 3 and 6 seconds per 100. So it's a steady state swim. It's an aerobic event. There's no pull buoy, no fins, no paddles, no drills. It's just straight swimming. Again, just measuring my pace over time. And I was just aiming every 2 weeks to get 1 second per 100 meters faster on that set, and that really brought in some good improvements. I'll have a threshold session per week. So the main set of that might be around about 2,500–3,000 meters at threshold pace, which for me now is around about 112, 113 per 100. That's long course meters, so probably a little bit faster than that in the 25 meter pool. But again, just using that to monitor benchmarks, and you might find over the course of the training program for this rock nest swim over 5 or 6 months, I maybe improve my threshold pace by 3.5–4 seconds 100 meters, which is not quite a lot. You might be starting at a slower level or a newer level, let's say your threshold pace is 140 per 100. You might see improvements of 10 or 12 seconds over that same sort of period of time. So very much horses for courses. We had a lot of guys in the group, like I mentioned, started off at a very low benchmark of fitness, never done a marathon swim before, and we saw some great improvements in times. And believe it or not, one of the guys improved his threshold pace by 43 seconds at 100 meters, which is just incredible. Sort of starting off in around about I think we got started off at around about 2 minutes 45 and got down to about 2 minutes basically. So and that was done in about 10 weeks. But there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so all of you who are watching this, please take note. Let's slow it down a bit. Some of them are going extremely fast.
Oh, really? Yeah,
extremely high outputs straight away.
Yes,
and you just said, without me saying exactly, to slow it down.
Totally. My first year of doing marathon swimming was back in 2009. So I started training for that in the latter part of 2008, and I knew that I had a good threshold pace, but equally I recognised I wouldn't simply be able to maintain that. Again, even back then I was about 115s per 100. I knew, I had an idea in my head that I wanted to become super economic at 130 per 100. Now 130 per 100, 15 seconds slower per 100, that seems ridiculous. It seems like, why would you want to slow down that much? But the reality is that 130s per 100 metres, 15 minutes a kilometre sort of thing, is still very, very good, very, very competitive swimming. In fact, would allow me to get across to Rottnest Island 20 k's in 5 hours, which I still quite haven't done yet. So I'm swimming at a much higher level than I was 3 or 4 years ago, and yet I still haven't broken that loose in 5 hours. And that includes sort of drink stops and stuff which you rush through, and it assumes that you're holding a very straight line, which your skipper, your boat pilot helps you do with that. But it's so important to actually get that economy at those slower levels, because it's a little bit like a Ferrari. You wouldn't drive from Land's End to John O'Groats in a Ferrari hoping to actually save fuel. But if you get in a nice big Volvo or something, turbo diesel or something like that, just chug along at 65, 70 miles an hour sort of thing, that car has that economy of go and go and go and go. And that's what you need to become as a swimmer. We call it changing your petrol engine to becoming like a diesel engine, and it's so important to actually get the economy at that level. And you still do faster training sets, and the competitive person inside you wants to still do that faster stuff, but it's so important to recognise the fact that unless you have that economy at the steadier levels, you'll set off too quick, you'll blow up, you'll slow down. And when you start to slow down in marathon swimming, we're not talking a difference of 3 or 4 seconds 100, we can be talking 20, 25 seconds 100. a pace which you probably just wouldn't be able to imagine you ever swam that slowly at. Okay, but it happens once you blow up, and then there's no coming back from that whatsoever. So, like Graham says, if you're going at it hard now, and you've still got 16 weeks to go, sort of thing, don't be afraid to just back it off a little bit and experiment with actually holding a steadier pace for the key sessions that you're doing. Like I say, I'll do this 10k swim every Thursday morning, and by the end of it, I was swimming 118 to 120. That's still 5 or 6, 7, even 7 seconds slower per 100 metres than my threshold pace. But that threshold pace can only be maintained consistently for 1500 metres, not for 10 kilometres. My 10 kilometre threshold pace, of course, is 118 to 120 per 100 metres. So yeah.
Cheers, Paul. So some good advice there. As always, slow up to go faster.
Crazy as it seems.
Thanks, Paul.
No problem. Cheers.